a possessed woman that would vomit glass and nails to another that was possessed for 14 years. Today, we are going to look at some of the scariest possessions and exorcisms in history. Starting off this countdown, we have Gottliebin Dittis. This is the name of a 28-year-old German woman who was said to be possessed in 1842. It all started when she began to experience paranormal activity going on in her house. Soon after the haunting started, she would slip in and out of these trance-like states. It took the priest 2 years before the demon was finally expelled from her body. So for 2 years, she was tortured by the demons inside of her. In fact, she would vomit blood, glass, and nails. After a number of exorcisms, this woman was finally freed, and it was revealed that she was being possessed by a widow who went crazy and murdered her family and then buried them in a field. That was just one of the demons that possessed her, among others, and we still don't know why this woman chose her, but she did. Moving on to number 9, we have the Exorcism of Gina. In 1990, a teenager from Florida by the name of Gina underwent an exorcism. In fact, her exorcism was broadcast on ABC network for millions of people to watch. In the end, 29 people ended up tuning in. During the exorcism, Gina was strapped to a chair and tried to fight back a number of times. She would bark at the priest and also yell out when he would press a cross against her forehead. In the end, it was found that she was possessed by a number of demonic spirits, including one named Zion and one named Minga. In our 8th spot today, we have the Exorcism of George Lucens. In 1788, a woman named Sarah Baber reported English tailor George Lucens to the church and begged them to help him. George's behavior was very alarming to her, and she knew that he was possessed. He would go into these fits where he would scream and sing loudly in different voices. He would also make inhumane noises and sing church songs backwards. On Friday the 13th of that year, 7 clergymen performed an exorcism on George, during which he barked and growled. In the end, the 7 priests commanded the demons in George to leave. Thankfully, it worked. George snapped out of the state and he immediately started praying to God. He was saying things like "Bless Jesus," and so they knew that the demons were out of his body. Coming in at number 7, we have Clara Germana Sell. In 1906, a 16-year-old woman from South Africa, Clara, decided to make a pact with the devil, which obviously went wrong because she ended up getting possessed. During her possession, she would behave erratically, growl, speak in tongue, exhibit superhuman strength, and would even tear the clothes off her own body. In fact, when the priests were performing the exorcism, the holy water they splashed on her would literally burn her skin. She even levitated in front of 170 witnesses. In the end, a noxious smell left her body, and they knew that that was the evil spirit leaving her, and she was freed from the demonic spirits that were possessing her. Moving on to number 6, we have Michael Taylor. Sadly, this exorcism did not end well for Michael or his family. It was 1974, and Michael was a 31-year-old father of 5 children and husband to Christine Taylor. Everything was going fine when one day he just snapped. He had a huge public outburst and started screaming at everyone and being belligerent to his wife. According to witnesses, and I quote, "I suddenly glanced at Mike and his whole features changed. He looked almost bestial. He kept looking at me and there was a really wild look in his eyes. I knew that only the name of Jesus would save me, and I just started saying over and over again, Jesus. When Christine heard me calling on the name of Jesus, she started saying it too, and I believe firmly that I was only by calling on his name I was not killed." Michael ended up undergoing a number of exorcisms. One night, a bunch of priests spent hours casting out 40 demons from him. They knew that there was still 3 more demons inside of him. They said it was murder, madness, and violence still inside of him. But they were all exhausted, so they went home and they said that they would resume the next day. Hello, are they dumb? Clearly. That night, he attacked and killed his wife. He ripped out her eyes and tongue and then strangled also their poodle to death. Police found him shortly after, wandering the streets covered in blood. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the possession of Julia. Now, this is a fairly recent case of possession. In 2008, a woman named Julia became possessed. Apparently, Julia was the queen of a satanic cult, and one night got attacked by a demon. Immediately, she knew that she needed help and went to a local priest. But he was like, hell no, I'm not dealing with this demon. So then she reached out to a psychiatrist named Richard Gallagher. Gallagher then analyzed her behavior and knew that she wasn't wasn't mentally ill, but indeed possessed. During their meetings, items would fly off the shelves in the office, and Julia would speak in tongue and share intimate details about Richard that she couldn't possibly have known. He knew that she needed to be exorcised immediately. When she did undergo her exorcism, she got very violent, had super strength, levitated, and changed the temperature in the room. In our fourth spot, we have the Exorcism of Laura. This is another fairly recent case. Back in 2015, a woman named Laura from Argentina became possessed. In fact, her entire exorcism was filmed. During the exorcism, we can see Laura writhing in pain and contorting her body. She also screams a number of profanities and bangs her head around. While the priests are trying to get the demons out of her, she screams out loud in pain. The exorcism finally comes to an end and she begins crying and falls backwards, exhausted. Thankfully, she was freed from the demons possessing her. In our third spot, we have the Exorcism of Rosa. In 2015, a man named Father Amorth took on the possession case of a woman named Rosa. Rosa was in her late 30s when strange things began happening that were out of her control. She was acting different and she constantly had outbursts. Things got so bad that her family took her to see Father Amorth. He ended up performing 9 or more exorcisms on her. During the exorcisms, Rosa's body would throb, she would thrash violently, she would foam from the mouth, and she would try to attack the bystanders. She even would speak to the father in Latin when she didn't even know or speak the language. In the end, the exorcism was successful, and Father Amorth determined that the cause of possession was due to a curse that her brother's girlfriend put on her. Her brother and the girlfriend were members of a satanic cult, and the girlfriend was a witch. In our second spot, we have Anna Ecklund. Now, this is a very famous case, and I've talked about her before. Anna Ecklund was an American woman who in 1928 became possessed and underwent a number of exorcisms. During her exorcisms, things would happen like she would hiss or howl like an animal, she would float in the air, and whenever holy water touched her skin, it burnt her skin right off. She would also climb up her bedroom walls and speak in tongues. This all started when she was only 14 years old and got worse as she got older. The first exorcism took place when she was just 14 and it was a success, but only for a short period of time until she got possessed again. In 1928, Anna went under 30 exorcisms and all of them failed. So they decided to send her to St. Joseph's Church in Iowa to see if they could get the demons out of her. While there, she apparently would throw up 20 to 30 times a day and it reeked. It was so bad that the nuns had to take 15-minute shifts in there, or else they would become incredibly ill. In the end, it was discovered that Anna got possessed due to a curse that her father and her aunt put on her. Her aunt was apparently a witch and would make potions and put it in her food, and she became possessed. Crazy. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Roland Doe. The case of Roland Doe is the true story that inspired the movie The Exorcist. It all began in the late 1940s in Washington, D.C. with a 13-year-old named Roland Doe. We don't actually know his last name, so they just gave him the name Doe. Anyways, Roland lost his Aunt Harriet, who he loved and shared a special connection with. Shortly after her death in 1949, Roland started to experience strange things. He would hear scratching coming from the floors and walls of his room, and things around him would move on their own. Roland's family began to worry about him, so they sent him to a local Catholic church for help. They then decided to perform an exorcism on Roland. Upon doing so, Roland would convulse badly. He even managed to rip out a spring from the mattress that he was strapped down on. He took the spring and slashed one of the priests with it. A few days later, scratches began to appear all over Roland's body. In fact, at one point, an X appeared scratched into his chest. Another thing they saw was a pitchfork-shaped pattern of red lines move across his body. The marking went from the boy's thigh and moved down to his ankle. Upon all this crazy stuff that was happening to Roland, the priest noticed a strange pattern in his behavior. During the day, he was calm and normal, but at night he would get wild and scream and act belligerent. Every night, Roland would undergo an exorcism. It was believed that he was possessed by 10 different demons. Finally, on April 18th in 1949, the priest managed to expel Satan from his body. They shouted at Satan, saying that Saint Michael would battle him for Roland's soul. While Roland twitched, 7 minutes later, he came out of his trance and simply said, "He's gone." And after that, everything went back to normal. All right, guys, that's all for today's video. If you want to see more spooky content like this or anything related to exorcisms or possessions, I'll link a little playlist up here. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what kind of spooky content you want to see from me. With that being said, I've been your host, Lindsay Ivan. Stick around for some bloopers, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye. Starting off this countdown, we have the, how the f do you pronounce this? Let's look it up real quick. Gottliebindidis? Oh, it's a woman. Clergymen? I always say clergy, but it's probably like clergymen, whatever. Thankfully, it worked. George was... Moving on at number 6, we have Mikael. Oh, no, this is a different one. It finally comes to an end, and sorry. It was so bad that the nuns had to take 15-minute Roland's family began to worry about him, and so they... Finally, on April